So, have you ever fired up a brand new $60 game, looked at the gorgeous graphics, and just felt nothing? You know, like you're staring at a technical marvel, but the magic, the soul, just isn't there? Well, that feeling is at the very heart of one of the biggest debates in entertainment today. And we're diving right in to tackle that one huge question. Have video games actually lost their soul? I mean, think about it. We've gone from pixelated heroes and literally drawing our own maps on paper to these unbelievable photorealistic worlds. The entire landscape of gaming has been totally transformed. But you gotta wonder, did we lose something along the way? There's a growing feeling that we did. And it's splitting the whole community into two camps, with completely different ideas of what makes a game great.
All right, so in this corner, let's meet the retro purist. This is the gamer who misses the good old days of real challenge and discovery, the one who thinks modern games are just pretty, soulless products. And in the other corner, you've got the modern apologist. They're all about that 4K 60 frames per second life, and they'll argue that, let's be honest, a lot of old games were just plain clunky. So let's break down their arguments.
Okay, so who's got it right? Let's kick things off with round one, gameplay philosophy. This all comes down to how a game feels to play. Is the goal to really challenge the player, to trust them to figure things out? Or is it to make sure the experience is super smooth, convenient, where nobody ever gets stuck? The purists' number one complaints, hand-holding. They're sick of it. They argue modern games basically treat players like they're idiots. You know what I'm talking about. Every single climbable ledge is covered in that infamous yellow paint. Huge objective markers are always on screen. For them, that completely kills the thrill of discovery. You're not exploring a world, you're just following a GPS. But the apologist fires right back and says, look, that's not hand-holding. It's just good design that actually respects your time. They'll argue that tons of old games were almost unplayable because of their ancient design choices. Just think about the original Resident Evil or Silent Hill, those dreaded tank controls made just turning around a nightmare. For the apologist, fighting the controls isn't a challenge, it's just a frustrating chore. And this right here, the two versions of Dead Space, illustrates the tension perfectly. The purist absolutely loves the original's diegetic guide. That just means the guide is part of the game world, not some icon slapped on your screen. It was genius, but the apologist says, hey, the remake's modern controls are just objectively better. They're what make the game fun and playable for a new audience that has zero patience for clunky controls.
And this whole debate leads us straight into our next round, which might be the most explosive one yet, the remake revolution. Seriously, beloved classics are being brought back to life constantly. But are we watching a loving preservation of art? Or is this just a creatively bankrupt industry cashing in on our nostalgia?
For the purist, a lot of these remakes are just cynical cash grabs. They'll point to disasters like the GTA trilogy, which was a buggy mess with an art style that totally betrayed the original. And they're looking at games like Metal Gear Solid Delta with a whole lot of suspicion, where it's just going to be a pretty but ultimately soulless version of a masterpiece. But here's where the modern apologist throws a huge wrench in that argument with some pretty powerful data. Check out this number. According to industry surveys, a whopping 85% of people who play a remake have never played the original game. Think about what that means. It suggests remakes aren't really for the old fans. They're a bridge, introducing these timeless stories to a huge new generation. And as you can see from this chart, players themselves are totally split on whether changes are a good thing or a bad thing. So if you're a developer, what do? Do you cater to the purists or to the new blood? The purists' counter-argument is that this bridge to new players often costs way too much. They argue that original content is constantly being changed or, as they see it, sanitized to fit modern tastes. This quote here is a perfect example, talking about changes to character designs in the Dragon Quest III remake. For the purist, that's not updating, that's erasing the artist's original vision. And this whole fight over remakes and artistic vision brings us to the final round, the biggest question of them all. Has the creative soul of gaming just been crushed by the cold, hard reality of money? The purist will tell you that old games were complete pieces of art. You bought it once, you owned it, you enjoyed it. Now they see an industry run by live services. Games like Fortnite or Destiny, they aren't meant to be finished. They're endless treadmills of battle passes and daily logins designed to be a second job, all to get as much time and money out of you as possible. But the apologist hits back with a dose of cold, hard reality. Making a modern AAA game like Cyberpunk or The Last of Us Part 2 can cost $500 million. This quote from a former PlayStation exec says everything. Live services and remakes aren't just greed. They're the financial engine that actually makes it possible to fund the gigantic, risky single-player games that everybody says they want. But the purist says it's not just about profit anymore. They argue there's another corporate force shaping games, the rise of something called ESG frameworks. Basically, as you can see here, these are scorecards that big investment firms use to grade a company on social issues, not just on how much money it makes. So, the heart of the purists' argument here is this fear that creative decisions are no longer about art. They claim that to get funding from massive investment firms like BlackRock, game studios are being pressured to make games that check certain social boxes. And that, they say, leads to stories that feel less like genuine art and more like corporate propaganda. And so, the retro purist rests their case, passionately, maybe even with a bit of a broken heart. They believe we've traded real challenge for convenience that treats us like children. We've swapped artistic integrity for predictable profits, and we've abandoned timeless design for fleeting trends. The very soul of gaming, they say, is being sold off to a corporate machine that cares more about metrics and scorecards than it does about fun. But the modern apologist's final word is one of total optimism. Gaming has never been more spectacular, more technically jaw-dropping, or more welcoming to new people. Games like God of War Ragnarok tell these incredible stories that were just a dream a decade ago. And yeah, the financial model isn't perfect, but it's what supports this insane innovation while also making sure classic games aren't lost to time. So, where do you stand? Are we living in a creative dark age, fueled by corporate greed and checklists? Or are we in an absolute golden age of technology and accessibility? The debate is far from over, and at the end of the day, the future of gaming is really up to us. It's your call.